back to Spring Into Math 5. This is Mr. Stein here again, and today we're talking measurement tools. So we've talked about the metric system, we talked about the customary units of measurement. Now we're going to talk about measurement tools to kind of tie the ideas together. All right, so whether you're measuring the length of items using the customary system of measurement or the metric system, you still have to decide which measurement tool is the best one to use for each situation. So there are the most commonly used tools for measurement. So let's talk about those. We have rulers, tape measures, yardsticks, and meter sticks. Those are the ones that are going to come into play most often. All right, now rulers are used all the time in math. Rulers are used to measure small things. Remember, a ruler is only 12 inches long, so it's not going to be something that you're going to want to measure large items with and flip it over. It's just going to be inaccurate. So most rulers show both customary units of measurement like inches and metric units of measurement such as the millimeter and centimeters. And if you recall from our last lesson, we talked about how the ruler on one side has inches, on the other side has centimeters, and a lot of times rulers will list it as mm for millimeters, showing the little lines, but actually the big numbers are your centimeters. Okay, so you can still measure a small item in customary units or metric units. So you can see here we have a hair clip and we're measuring it with a ruler with the inch side, and it's about 2 inches. Now it's not exactly 2 inches, but it's about 2 inches. Right, and so here's our same hair clip using the centimeter side of the ruler, and this particular ruler happens to list it as centimeters. Some will list it as millimeters, but remember, either way, those numbers are centimeters. And you can see that it's about 5.5 centimeters. So you can see the relationship between inches and centimeters. All right, another tool to measure length is a tape measure. All right, they are used to measure many of the distances that are too long for a ruler to measure easily, and they're flexible also. So they're not rigid like a ruler, they're flexible, they can kind of bend, and if you've ever seen somebody measure for carpeting or measure something for height, oftentimes people will kind of roll it to the ground or roll it up to the ceiling or whatever they're doing, because it's a flexible, non-rigid tool. Okay, so tape measures most commonly show length in inches and feet, but sometimes a tape measure has both customary units and metric units marked. I know the tape measure that I commonly use at my house just has inches and feet, not the metric units, but some will have them. So we use tape measures all the time to measure things. Like I said, if you've ever had new carpet at your house, or if you've ever gone to Home Depot, sometimes the guy there will pull out the tape measure to help measure something. It's a very common thing to measure with when you're talking about something that's larger than what you would use a foot for, or a ruler rather. All right, we have a yardstick as well. A yardstick measures things by the yard and only shows a customary unit and of inches and feet. So since there are 3 feet in a yardstick could be used for things that are longer than a piece of paper, but not too long, where you might want to use a tape measure because you're going to go over more than 3 feet. And really, when you're talking about picking the appropriate tool, you don't want to be doing the thing where you're flipping it over to find out how long something is. You want to use the tool that's longer than the item you're measuring. So some of the things that you can measure with a tape measure, we could also measure with a yardstick, but it depends if a rigid measure like a yardstick is appropriate versus a flexible tape measure. And so sometimes, like if you've ever bought yarn or bought fabric, they'll measure it with something that's rigid because they don't want it to move or bend. All right, now we have a meter stick. A meter stick measures 1 meter and shows only the metric units of millimeters and centimeters. Meter sticks are used to measure objects that are larger than a piece of paper, but again, not too long. So remember that you can use centimeters and millimeters if the object is smaller than a piece of paper. So if it's larger than a piece of paper, that's where that meter stick is going to come into play. So those items are easily measured with a ruler when they're smaller than a piece of paper. So a meter stick is a little over 3 feet long because a meter is approximately 3 2/10 feet. So a meter stick closely compares to a yardstick. So if you think about 3 feet in a yard, a meter stick is 3.2 feet, it's pretty close. So for instance, where a yardstick would be used for customary units, a meter stick would be used for metric units. All right, so I included this nice graphic again to kind of get you, keyed in on the different tools for measuring length. So we have a ruler, and that's going to measure the units of inch and feet. 12 inches is 1 foot. We have a yardstick, and that measures the units of yards, feet, and inches. We have a meter stick, and that's going to measure the units of a meter in centimeters. And then we have a tape measure, and that's going to be inches and feet, and that's going to be your customary units typically only. All right, so I hope this kind of gave you a good idea of when you're choosing which tool to pick that's appropriate for the item you're measuring. I hope this kind of clues you in on what makes sense. See you next time.